welcome to Inclusion Tech Hacks. I am so excited for this one. It's going to be a good one. Welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I am Dr. Desiree Alexander. I am the founder and CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting, and this is how you can get in contact with me. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, no, you do not get a certificate, but you do get the knowledge. All of the resources that are talked about today will be underneath the video. You may have to click on show more. So what do we have coming up? We have tech you can do leveling up with Google tools. We have 2 left, only 2 in the series left. If you're looking at the list and going, oh no, I wanted to see docs. Guess what? The video's on the YouTube channel. So Monday, we have drawings and Jamboard, and Tuesday, we have Google Sites. So you do have to register for each of them separately. And then we have the Teach Tech Conference coming up. It is 4 days of glory, 4 days of a whole bunch of presenters presenting. It is $40 if you use the 20% off code that you see at the bottom, friends. So it's pretty much $10 a day. And then we have Creating Your Digital Library coming next weekend. If you've never seen Nancy Joe, you want to be there. Then we have Ed Change Global. It's coming back, y'all. If you haven't heard so far, because it's a bunch of people coming, so we can have a bunch more because it's virtual. It has always been virtual. You can attend. So come and join us for the original 24-hour international conference for free. Then we have Financial Literacy for Educators. That's going to round out July. Back to School with Bunsey, August 21st. Equity is not an add-on. This is a brand new session that we just added. This crew, we present all over talking about equity. It's always a great time. And this time we have 2 hours to get much more discussion going. I cannot wait. And then we have Infusing Digital and Writing Tools Any Way You Teach with Dr. Hines. I will be at TCCA. I love TCCA, one of my absolute favorite conferences. And hopefully this year we will be in person in Houston, Texas. And it is completely free. And then we have Google Educator Certification Panel in December, where a whole bunch of educators who are trainers and innovators and coaches will come and discuss their experiences. And guess what? It's about that time. Oh, I got a chill. It's about that time to get started. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Inclusion Tech Hacks.
Okay, hey guys, my name is Jessica Reed. I will also be presenting at at 2 of those conferences that Desiree just said, or Dr. Alexander. And I want to go ahead and apologize. I did not get in a fight with anyone. I had to have a cyst removed from my eye, and I've got a lovely Band-Aid because the stitches freaked my 4-year-old out. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to talk about inclusion tips and tricks. If you've ever seen me present before, this is very similar. I've added some new stuff just because of the past year we've had. So hopefully you can take something and learn something. And this template, if you really think it's cute, I did not create it. I wish I was that cool. And this is actually a template from Slides Mania. She has so many cool things. I just thought the little llama was cute. So, all right, I am Jessica Reed. I'm a middle school special education teacher who teaches ELA resource and inclusion. So basically, I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I have my same kids every single year, which is kind of cool because we start the year off. I know what they need. And we just, full forward. But I'm held to the same state standards. So basically, I teach the same 6th grade ELA stuff, just in a small group, along with going into the inclusion classroom. And this year, I will be 7th and 8th grade. So I'm kind of excited because I've worked with both of these teachers previously. I am a Google for Education trainer, and I'm a Google innovator, which if you ever get to do any of the Google certifications, innovator is my favorite one I've ever gotten. It was like the coolest thing I've ever gotten to do. That's actually how I met Dr. Alexander. So Very, very cool from the New York City cohort. All right, so what are we going to be talking about? We're going to talk about what we're going to be talking about. We're going to discuss students with disabilities. We're going to discuss some activities for collaboration, and then discuss some assistive technology that you may or may not be aware of that could be in your classroom that could help any student. All right, ESS students. I didn't say special ed, or I've always said SPED. My professor, my principal this year has referred to the special ed students as ESS. Now, like that acronym, although we have a ton of acronyms in special ed. So this is just another one, but we're going to talk a little bit about what is actually a special ed student. It really shouldn't matter how slowly a child learns. What matters is that we encourage them to never stop trying. And I feel like that's very, very precedent in my own life right now. I have a 4-year-old who we are trying to potty train. So if anybody has any potty training tips you want to put in the chat, I will look at them. We are trying to poop in the potty, and oh my God, it's a fight. But I have to keep encouraging her. That's where I was coming from, making that text to self connection for you. And also, if you hear me go, yay, if she comes in and tells me she pooped, that's why. But it's really important for any kid. We never stop encouraging them. We always want to encourage, and it can be super frustrating. I know for myself, it's frustrating with my own child. It can be frustrating with a kid in your classroom who you've taught the same thing over and over and over 35 times in 3 different ways. It can be discouraging as a teacher, but we always have to have that, I guess, fake it till you make it attitude sometimes with our kids, or we are encouraging them, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, even when we can be a little frustrated. All right, did you know inclusion can be fun? Inclusion and collaboration are very similar, but they're different. Like co-teaching and inclusion are the same, but collaboration and co-teaching are very different. Collaboration can be where you work with someone, like you and your partner across the hallway works together. You could, do vertical planning. That's collaboration. Inclusion and co-teaching is actually going to be like an arranged marriage, and sometimes you want to leave before December, but you may not. You can solve that by doing like a prenup, which is actually my Google Innovative project talking about just basically a contract of everything that you're doing in the classroom. But inclusion is going to be, which is co-teaching, it's going to be 2 teachers or a teacher and a parapro. Typically, the 2 teachers are going to be, one is going to be a content specialist, so it's going to be someone who knows the material, just like math or ELA. And other one is going to be able to develop ways to accommodate or modify assignments to meet the needs of the students. Typically, parapros don't do this, or ed assistants. They're usually in there to sometimes help for behavior or just to keep kids on track. Parapros are not in there to run your errands, especially if they are a special ed parapro. They are to be in there for the students, like they can help everybody, but they're not to just sit there on the back on their cell phone. That can be a little bit of a no. All kids can learn. The true purpose of technology for students with disabilities is to enhance the learning experience and provide ways to meet their goals. So what does that mean for you as a teacher? Well, that means that coming up with different ways for your kids to show mastery of subjects. You need to use your resources. I mean, there are so many cool things out there. You can use Twitter. You can use Flipgrid. I mean, we're going to go through several things, but you need to come up with different ways to show that the kid can show mastery, because let's be honest, not every kid's going to do great on a test, on a state test. I didn't even break 1,000 on the SAT, and like, not trying to my own horn, but I think I'm pretty smart, I'm just not a good test taker. And testing, like our state test, which is a whole nother story. For a kid sometimes who already has testing anxiety, that is like a snapshot of one day. What if that kid came to school from home with like no breakfast? Like their parents had a big fight the night before. I mean, there's so many different things that testing really is not showing the mastery. Now, some kids are fantastic test takers, and some kids really can show their mastery, but some can't. So that is the true purpose to me of technology for kids with special ed. It's just really being able to show how they can show mastery and enhance their learning experience. All right. I just thought this guy was really funny looking. Here's the thing. IEPs, and I'm just putting this as a broad statement. IEPs are legal documents. So that means at any point a parent, and when I'm in an IEP meeting, I always tell a parent, an IEP is a living, breathing document. At any point, a parent can come back to the team and say, I don't agree with this. This isn't working. We need to come up with a different idea for my child. Or the teacher and say, hey, she's met this goal. Can we talk about maybe what she needs to work on next? IEPs have to be completed a certain way in the classroom. They're not, I promise you, nobody just wants to write an IEP. If you're not a SPED teacher, you're a general ed. I've done both. I've been a general ed and a special ed. I promise you, nobody just wants to write an IEP because they're not fun to write. I think I had one IEP this past year that took me about 7 hours to write. And that's because I had like that much behavior data. And I'm, of course, a perfectionist. Nobody's going to look at it. I'm a perfectionist. And I had to have everything mapped and data and all this kind of stuff. That is really, it can be very draining. Just like others, like it's general ed teachers have to do some of the hardest things that I don't have to do. But I promise you, writing IEPs is not fun. But it is one thing that the IEP is created by a team of people, and usually that team of people is going to be your IEP, your the SPED teacher, case manager, usually a general ed teacher, the student, depending on the age, the parent, and your LRE, not your LRE. LRE is least restrictive environment. Your LEA, who's going to be your local education agency, which also could be like your principal or your SPED director. And if the kid receives any type of services like OT, PT, speech, and then if the kid's in high school, voc rehab, any of those kind of things, there's a whole lot to it, okay? The reason the IEP is there is to figure out how the student is going to succeed in his or her LRE, which is least restrictive environment. And so many times that's going to be for those students, even if you think that they would benefit from being in a small group. They may not. Resource is not for everybody, which is a battle I fight all the time. Just because a kid is like below grade level does not mean that they need to come to my class. They just don't. There's a specific reason they come to me as a resource teacher. You have technology, you have all these different things that can help the kid benefit from being in a big group. So hopefully, I just want you to understand that IEPs are legal documents, and that's probably like a little bit of a soapbox stance. I just don't want you to get in trouble. I have to go to court. My husband's an attorney. He talks about court. I don't want to even have to deal with that kind of stuff. I like my job. I don't want to totally mess stuff up. So, all right, let's get to the good stuff. Okay, so I am a Nearpod pioneer, so I love to use Nearpod with my students. So I have suggested Nearpod for inclusion and in my resource class, and I'm going to explain to you why. So we're getting into the good stuff now. All right, you can use it in the ELA classroom. You can use it across the board in all the different types of classrooms. Now, granted, we have the paid version. There is a free and a paid version. And Nearpod is just like Pear Deck. It's just whichever one is it's like apples and oranges, whichever one floats your boat. I love Nearpod. That's just my personal preference. You can use it in the ELA classroom. I love any type of way that I can have my students have a visual. Maybe sometimes doing on paper, somehow using it on the computer seems to be cooler, so they can make a Venn diagram. So like you can have your differences, you can talk about compare and contrast and how things are similar. That is a very hard concept for some students. You could do this for math. You could do this for science. I've used it before when I was talking about the protagonist and antagonist in a story, which is the good guy and the bad guy, because that's a hard concept. Like the kids, we've had that conversation, like they don't understand. Well, I don't, why is that the good guy? And we have to explain what's the difference between the two? How are they similar? They're both main characters. They're not, which goes into all of the different character words and all that good stuff. So it can be changed upon subject matter. It's just really dependent on how you want to do it. So the collaborative board. This is one of my all-time favorite things to do. It can be used for entrance and exit work. One thing cool about Nearpod and Pear Deck, they're basically presentation platforms where you can see if a kid's on the presentation, like they can't just automatically leave it without you knowing. And you can tell by like your phone through the app and stuff. So that's one reason why I like it, because I can walk around. The collaborative board is very similar to Padlet, where you can just post a question and have the kids respond, and you can actually you can edit, or you can prevent them from posting. Like, you have to have teacher approval. So that's a good way to just get a quick snapshot of what they know and what they don't know. And just Time to Climb game is just a fun game. It's very similar to Kahoot, Gymkit, and Blooket, which we'll talk about Blooket in a little bit. It's just a way that the kids can create fun avatars. They get to see these little things climb up a mountain, or whichever space scene or whichever scene you choose, and they get to see, hey, I'm beating so-and-so, and the kids really get excited about that. So, all right, let's get into some other ideas. Okay, so before we really get into it, let me just tell you, we use Google for our LMS platform. So all of the ideas that I'm going to talk about, I've used in the classroom. Please take and use at your own, but I don't really have the experience with Microsoft. I've done the Microsoft little courses, but because we don't use Microsoft all the time. I am strictly a Google person. Any of all these things can be taught to a student. You just have to make it a part of your rituals and routines. I promise you, all students can learn. Even a kid with autism can learn. You just have to be willing to work with them. Just like if you're a special ed teacher and you get very frustrated because maybe you have, or vice versa, general ed teacher, you feel like the SPED teacher's not helping. You guys have to communicate and talk, because all of these kids have every right to learn, especially now with all the craziness that we've had going on. There is a difference between accommodation and modifications, and I didn't mean to do that. There's a difference. Accommodation is going to be where you have an alteration of the environment, curriculum, format, or equipment that allows the individual with the disability gain access to content or complete assigned tasks. So like an accommodation for something would be, instead of maybe having the kid write their answers on the test, having them read them to you or to share their thoughts verbally. That's an accommodation. Now, a modification completely is going to be a change in the curriculum. And that would be something that if you're having a lot of modifications, you may want to talk to another teacher about, to see what more specific can be helped for that student. But there is a difference between accommodations and modifications. So, all right, some Google ideas. We have the Share Deck, which I love to use. You can use it for assessments. So maybe you decide you guys are going to do Edgar Allan Poe, which is one of my favorite things to do in the month of October, especially Halloween types, the horror, gothic romanticism. And what I've done with my kids is have them actually, like, we've taken the poem, and one side is the stanza and the other side is where they respond, and they get to decorate it. However, and at the bottom, they have to tell me in a couple of sentences, because they do still have to write, how did Poe's life affect his writing? Because if you didn't know, Edgar Allan Poe had a very dramatic life where, like, everyone he loved died, basically. And I mean, he was a drunk, he gambled all the time, all of those things. So there's one way. Another way to do a Share Deck is maybe if you are having the students create different science projects and you want to have the kids work together, and you assign, hey, you guys have slides A through C, you guys have slides D through F, and such on. I'm currently in a computer science endorsement class, which is how you can get to teach different things in Georgia. And what's really cool about it is we all get to see what each other are doing, but we have very specific slides for us, for like each individual group. So that's kind of cool, and everything's together in one big thing. So you can use it for assessment. You could have a Google Slides. I mean, I feel like there's so many different ways you can do it. I'll just keep rambling. But another way, especially Slothmania has some really good templates, or you may be a great template creator yourself. You can have interactive notebooks, or maybe you can have an agenda. I myself have a little bit of a calendar problem. I think at this point I have 5 agendas on my desk. But what I'm hoping to do for myself this year, because we are going to do Google, we are going to have our Chromebooks in the classroom. The kids won't get to take them home unless, another pandemic happens. They will have access to an interactive notebook for my class, and everything will be kept there instead of allowing them to have like a binder or any of that kind of stuff, just because it seems to be a lot of times kids lose things, especially in middle school. So one cool thing about Google Slides is if you have a student who has anxiety, this is just a thought process for you. You have someone who has anxiety, maybe you can actually have your student go over to the side, record their slideshow, and record it like Screencastify, kind of like we are now, where you you could have their face or whichever type of Chrome recorder you want to use, and they can present and then share it with you. That way you know that they have it. You don't have them have anxiety because they may have social anxiety. I guarantee you a lot of ESS or SPED kids have. Going in front of somebody can be very intimidating for them. And that's just one way to do it. So, all right, Google Forms. You can use it to receive feedback from your students. Don't worry, they will be honest. I didn't think my kids would actually be that honest with me. We sent out, at the end of the year, I sent out 2 questions to my students like, hey, what is something I did great this year, and what's something I could do to help you next year? And now a lot of the kids were very, very great to me, or had great responses. I think one, because in my situation, I was also not just a student's teacher, but I'm also their case manager. So I'm in constant communication with the parent just about things and how things are going on throughout the day. And she just wrote me like, you just make me feel safe at school, all that kind of good stuff, which, makes your heart a little happy. And then on the flip side, I had one kid write me, I wish we had more free time in your class. I was going, okay, well, maybe you're learning something. And that's what you want to, is have more free time. So your kids will be honest with you, especially if you want to see how your kids are feeling about how things are going, maybe in their group work. Are they feeling like they're the only ones doing it? A lot of times you will have kids who are not going to share with you verbally their thoughts. You can, if they're like working with someone and they're getting very frustrated, you can send out a form and they can respond to you. You can even have the students find a picture, respond with images if they struggle with writing to kind of show their emotion. These are things that you could teach the kids so early on that it would just become the norm of how they can respond. It's a good way to see how the kids are understanding your materials. Maybe you think, oh, yes, that lesson was great. And then they look and you're like, oh, crap. No, it wasn't good. So just think about it that way. Google Forms can be used in several different ways. Parent contacts, information back and forth. I just think the idea of getting feedback from our students and reflecting upon ourselves is a great way. Sometimes getting feedback from other adults can be very difficult, but I take it to heart with my students just because I interact with them all the time. So hopefully that will help you. And that also shows kids that when we receive feedback, we will take it and we'll use it to our advantage. So, and you can talk about constructive criticism and do all that kind of stuff in a positive manner, and then talk about digital citizenship. Kind of opens Pandora's box a little bit if you go down that road. All right, Google Docs. You can have the students work on grammar, reading comprehension, other activities in groups. If you guys are working on reading comprehension, maybe you have the students have listened to a story and then they're answering the questions together in a small group. Or having them work on an essay together, maybe filling out an essay or doing a timeline on a Google Doc. They can work on it in groups, or if they're at home, they can all share the same document and work on it. It is one of the things that you have to teach them how to do, because assigning everyone a certain color, all of that kind of stuff, because if not, they'll mess up each other. That happened to me earlier last year, and I had a kid have a complete meltdown because so-and-so racist face, even though it was, 7th grader sometimes. Once we got through it and they understood what they were supposed to do, and that was my fault as a teacher because I thought that they already knew what they were doing, and they didn't. I had to go back and rethink, and oh yeah, let's go through this step by step. So another way is if you're having the students work in small group, like I said, you can have yourself teacher responding and providing feedback, which is a great opportunity to give them some positive ways. And you can provide feedback in several different ways. You could record a video and insert it. You could demote, which we'll talk about in a minute. You can, if you have this is a really cool idea. If you have a parent who's helping the kid with the homework and who is struggling maybe with math, the parent could actually record what the problem is. Maybe say, I'm not understanding how she's getting this. Can you explain to us how you did it? The parent can put that in there, and then you can respond back to also in a video. Or if you're having the kids like maybe have missed work or anything and they have access to a Google Doc through their Google Classroom, you can insert videos on how you did things. Just some ideas. And just a good way to have for your notes. Okay, so I love Sites in Classroom. I think what's one cool thing about Google Sites is it's very easy to use. I have not tried Wix yet. I've tried Weebly. I'm not a big fan of Weebly myself because I felt like it was very hard to maneuver. I feel like Sites is something that's very easy to use for students, for them to create their own websites, and it's easy to navigate. And you can keep it within a safe domain, like because Google has things where you can share it with people who has this link or within your domain or, the whole public. I love that about Sites. Google Sites can also be used kind of like a home base for students when you're out, or provide opportunities to collect work. It's a great way to have accessibility. So maybe you are doing a project for your kids based off of theme, and you want to, or compare and contrast, and you have all of the materials in one place. Maybe you upload a video of you actually reading the story, another version, all of these kind of different things, so you make the site accessible for your kids. But just remember, like if you have content on there like a vocabulary or something, that it's appropriate, because if you decide to like watch a brain pop and you record it on YouTube and you pop the brain pop YouTube onto YouTube, they will take it down and they'll shut it down. I mean, it's like Disney. If you sell stuff that without Disney's permission, they'll eventually find you. So just think of it that way. Any way that you can make your site accessible for your visual learners, your auditory learners, is going to benefit you. Maybe instead of having your students write a paper or write a paragraph, you have the students complete a graphic organizer, breaking things down. That's an accommodation. That could be something simply done. You just have, group A, group B, and then the students know which group they're in, and then they turn it in. That's one way to do it on your Google site. I also love the idea of Google Sites being something that can be used for project-based learning for your students that can lead to use in the real world. So maybe you and your other teachers, maybe you're an English teacher and you're going to work with the social studies and the math teacher. You guys are going to talk about how economics works. You are going to have your students come up with a project, come up with an invention. They're going to learn about cost and efficiency and all of that good stuff. They're going to learn about supply and demand. And then in your classroom, they're going to learn how to build a website and how to write copy. So you go through all this kind of stuff. The kids learn how to do it. 5 years from now, that one of your students goes, hey, I remember I made a website in so-and-so's class. Oh, yeah. They're able to make a website for themselves, maybe showcasing that they're a plumber, how to get information about them, how to contact them, their prices, their services, all that kind of stuff. And they learned it in your class, which is what we ideally want for our students, to have any type of activity be something that can eventually lead to use in the real world. So, classroom can serve as a hub for all work, which is what I really love, based off of whatever your platform is. Classroom is also a great way if you do have a co-teacher that you can actually have talk about students. You can have, you just go to Google Classroom and you add a co-teacher. And what's great about that is you have access to everything and you see all the students' work and all that kind of good stuff. I'm sorry, Isabel, I'm looking. The topic 7, I'm not sure. I don't know which one that is. If you'll put another question there, I'll try to answer it. It's just really cool. That way you have access. If you are an inclusion teacher and then you provide opportunities for your co-teachers, like, hey, like if you give access, anyway, it just can make life a lot easier and you all have access to the same thing, so it can lead to good discussion. Okay, so for progress monitoring for students, maybe that's what she was talking about. Progress monitoring, if you are a special ed teacher, what you could do is have a classroom for each of your students, depending on your caseload. If you're like a speech teacher and you have 75 kids on your caseload, that may not be the most ideal, but like I think the most I had this past year was 13. I can have an individual Google Classroom with my kids and I can send them work samples or like maybe math sheets, any of that kind of stuff that I know that is working on their goals, just for progress monitoring, and then they can fill it out. And when they're finished, if it's something that's like individual that I could do, not like reading fluency, but maybe reading comprehension, any of those kind of things, maybe having them practice writing, that could be one. Allowing them, I don't know the different classrooms within the Google site. You can, what I did for the different classrooms within the Google site, it was like I had, I haven't done that. I take that back. I haven't done that. This is just different classrooms. This is in Google Classroom. This is not on a Google site, if that makes sense. Sorry. I just like the idea of doing the different classrooms because it's safe and it's between you and that student, and you could let the parent know, like, hey, this is what this is, and let the other teachers know that if they have free time, they can work on their progress monitoring. So you're constantly not having to pull a kid out to do one-on-one stuff with them. Now, you still should be doing that, but not realistically, that doesn't always get to happen. So, okay, sorry if I didn't answer your question. I hate that. That's a good question to figure out. Here's some awesome choices. You've got Wakelet. If you don't know what Wakelet is basically Pinterest for teachers on steroids. It's just a really cool way to collaboration. You can use it with students and other teachers. So maybe you have a particular subject with your 7th grade team that you guys are all going to talk about one subject, and you guys create a Wakelet. My principal now has created a Wakelet where everybody has access to, and it's just the different media things for this upcoming school year. So, and that way she can just serve as send out the Wakelet resource. Screencastify, this is my particular type of Chrome recorder that I prefer. Can be used 3 different ways. There are other options. There are Loom. There's so many different things. I just like Screencastify because I like how you can have it recorded. Anytime that I can have a student record something and maybe share their frustration or, share their thoughts instead of seeing it in writing, sometimes it can be easier to understand. And I'm sure as we're all now into like year 2 of the pandemic, we all know about Chrome recorders and all that kind of good stuff. Just use it to your advantage is my biggest tip. Google Keep is going to be awesome for students with executive functioning issues. That's going to be one of those things where you can help your student become organized while they're still in control, but then you're helping them. So one way to do it is having your student be in charge of their homework and list and everything, and then you plus the parent plus all the other teachers have access to that Google Keep board and see what they're doing. You could do a Google Keep with your students, kind of keeping everything organized. You could do a Google Keep with your co-teacher of like who's going to contact what parent, what's going on this week, all of those good things. It's just a great way to keep organized. Flipgrid, do I need to say any more? Flipgrid is fantastic. It's just a way to respond to each other, have your students record. I love to use Flipgrid because if I have a student who, when they're writing, and I look at them like, oh, sweet Jesus, what does this say? But verbally, man, they got it. Flipgrid is a great way to use to show that. So, and I'm sorry, guys, I didn't realize how much I just kept going on about certain things. So, trying to make sure I speed up a little bit. Pear Deck, another way for presentations, very similar to Nearpod. It just has some differences. I will say I think Pear Deck has a lot more free stuff than Nearpod. Both of those are going to be, you can use as add-ons in Google Slides. Google Jamboard is easy and so fun to use. You don't have to have the super expensive Jamboard. You can do it through your phone or on the computer. It is going to be one of those things that you need practice. I would probably practice with before you share with your students, and they can just kind of, it's like a big whiteboard, and then you guys can interact. There are some cool things on there. There's like post-it notes that you can do. I've seen several people like do presentations using Google Jamboard. I did learn recently though that the more images and the more like videos and stuff you put on it, it's going to kind of make it lag. So be careful maybe how much you put on each of the Jamboards. So, all right, here's some other cool options. Adobe Spark. This is a really cool way for platforms to collaborate on. If you are going to have kids, like maybe you record a video, I would try Adobe Spark. Besides WeVideo, you can just invite the others to work with you. It's a great way to create presentations and voiceovers. So that could be one way. If you haven't done Canva, Canva has a Canva Educators account. It's like you can get all the pro stuff for free. You really need to try it because you can create infographics, anything social media. You can have your students work together on maybe like a big poster on a timeline. This also kind of teaches the kids on how to talk about the proper use of pictures and all this kind of things and ethics, because there are certain pictures that are going to be free. You know, the kids sometimes don't understand just because you Google an image and you find one, it's not guaranteed, hey, that's free, that someone doesn't deserve the credit. So I put Lookit on here because it's very similar to Kahoot or GymKit. Kahoot is great for younger kids. GymKit is cool for middle schoolers, especially when it comes to Halloween, because there's zombies versus humans. Lookit is like quizzes or Quizlet. It's just a way to review activities or new concepts, like a pretest or whatnot. It's very, very interactive, and my students love it, particularly because there's 9 at the last time I checked, there was like 9 different options. There's a free and a paid version. A lot of the things I'm going to talk about are free and paid versions. I'm all about free, but the kids really got into it. There's just different options. It's not like Kahoot where post something. A lot of times they get to do it like on their own, and then you can see like on your big screen who's winning. So it's just a cool way to review. So definitely check it out. All right, here's some other resources. Mote is a Chrome extension. You can just leave a recording for someone, so you can insert a Mote into like a Google Doc or anything. Basically, it's just an extension. It'll show up. So that might be something you want to try if you don't feel comfortable doing like a screen record comment. Sometimes it's also nice to actually hear what someone is thinking instead of reading it, because sometimes when we read things, we can misinterpret them. And like if you're trying to give a student a direction on what to do. Twitter, I love Twitter. I mean, you can get on your phone and ask any type of question, and somebody will respond to you, and it's from all over the place. And you can make so many connections. If you follow me on Twitter, I promise I'll follow you right back. I love it because you're learning you're learning about so many different things from so many different people, and you make awesome connections. Assembling Inclusion, this is a really cool resource that's launching on August 3rd, 2021, is by another fellow Google innovator. Her name is Katie. It has many different things for SPED that can be used by general education teachers, several little micro courses. There's so many cool things on there. Please check that out coming out in August. I would share that with any general ed teacher you know that is struggling maybe sometimes with understanding things from a SPED perspective. PhET is a really cool visual science math simulations for students. This is great for ESS students because a lot of times things are so far in concept, like sound waves, because you don't really actually see a sound wave you just hear it, I guess. You can actually get a simulation, like if you do such and such decibel, such and such, how does the wave react? So Read, Write, and Educator. These are tools from TextHelp to help with accessibility in the classroom using the Chromebook. There are other Chromebook readers and all that kind of stuff. My biggest suggestion for you is if you have a student who has an accommodation to where, like a testing accommodation where they get things read to them, have them practice with that, especially because it's not bad to have that accommodation. If they have an accommodation, they need to know how to use it. They need to understand, hey, this is here to help you, not to hurt you. That makes sense, because sometimes kids who are ESS are going to be embarrassed that they have to do this, especially as they get older. But if you can have something read to you where you're not focusing on the question and you can focus on like what the answer is asking, it can help you. So, and Equato is for math. All right, here are just some other cool resources, and then I'm going to hit assistive technology. BrainPop's just an interactive website. You do have to have a paid version. Vocabulary has several free ones on YouTube that you can listen to. It's just a hip hop videos and lessons to engage students, and a variety of topics across several subjects. I love vocabulary because you can actually individualize instruction for it. So if you know a student is struggling like with and I'll just be honest, may not yet, because that's a concept I don't understand. Sometimes after we've hit it for like four days, but sometimes when they hear it in a hip hop video, they get it rather than me talking about it. You could do a vocabulary, like if you do centers, or even if you're just doing individual work, you could do a vocabulary, and they can do a quiz, or they can have it read to them, and they can listen and answer. So you can definitely individualize for your students. Popla just allows students to visualize some ideas and brainstorm, which is very cool. WeVideo is, if you have not tried WeVideo, you really need to. There's a free and a paid version, obviously, but you can do green screen and way more. There's so many cool things about WeVideo. I think they're actually about to have a big conference themselves. Check them out. They've got some cool resources and some cool trainings as well. And they also have some very cool swag. Edpuzzle frustrates me currently at the moment because I'm having to complete Edpuzzle for my class, but I love it because it's one of those things for students who want to go through something really, really fast, which is hard for students with like ADHD, where they can't focus more than on like one thing for more than like 3 minutes. Edpuzzle will break down a video and you can insert questions, and then they can watch more section of the video and do the questions. So instead of it's chunking the video and chunking the questions into smaller things, which is great for students with disabilities because they don't have to focus on so much. They can worry about right then and there. And then it's like it can build upon each other. And then there's not that anxiety at the end of having to answer like 5 questions, which it'll help. Kids just may get a little frustrated because they can't skip past the videos to get to the questions. So definitely try Edpuzzle. There's a free and a paid version for that as well. All right, we're going to talk real quick about assistive technology. It can be simple to complicated. I'm going to share some ideas with you for your classroom. Assistive technology is going to be products, equipment, and systems that can enhance learning, working, and daily living for persons with disabilities. So, or it could really just help anybody, but specifically students with disabilities, there is a section in the IEP, or at least in Georgia, where it asks about assistive technology, what is being used in the classroom, and what could be benefited, how could the student benefit from having maybe some other type of technology besides just the Chromebook in the classroom. So some no-tech ideas that I guarantee you have probably even tried, or you maybe used yourself. Pencil grips, Post-it notes, slanted surfaces, which is going to help a student not have to look so far down to read. They can pop it up here. Raised on paper and colored overlays. Colored overlays are going to be, they're like a little ruler, kind of like this, where it's going to have just like a section of like maybe yellow, and the student puts on it and they can follow. It helps someone who is not going to be so overwhelmed with this entire paper focus on one sentence, which is going to help them. Lockers, canes, brailles, scribe. I know a lot of teachers can be very difficult where they don't want to have a student have a scribe, If a student struggles with writing, tell me like it just makes no complete sense, or they have to, if they're able to tell someone something and then somebody can write it down and it makes sense, if that makes sense what I'm saying, and you have to copy. I mean, it's serious. Like if you are going to be a scribe for a test, you have to take exactly what they say and copy it down, and that's the answer. But it relieves that anxiety and that stress from that student of having to try to write, and they're able to focus on, hey, this is what I'm saying. Communication boards, Braille, weighted blanket. I don't know if any of you guys also have like anything weighted. Disney recently came out with some weighted animals. I have a Stitch myself because I struggle with anxiety. Weighted pen, eye gazers, weighted bars, anything that's going to help a student feel calm, because so many of our kids struggle with sensory at this point. Like myself, I currently have a blanket wrapped around myself that's just kind of that way. If I'm frustrated or if I'm struggling myself, I have something soft and it's not difficult. So many times, if you have a sensory stuff going on, it's going to really, really bother you. Like I personally can't wear certain clothes now. I probably should have had OT when I was younger. I can't wear certain clothes because the tag is bothering me, even though the tag's not there, or the dress is too much. So, and they'll focus on that. And if they focus on that, they're not going to be able to do their schoolwork because that's all that they can focus on. And identifying that one thing and just mulling on that all day is something that is very, very typical of a student like who has autism. And to prevent that, just having different type of things to help is gonna help help you and help them. All right, low tech ideas is gonna be a graphic organizer. I know sometimes teachers don't want to do that, but it can help. Visual schedules, especially if you have a student who is going to struggle with transition, having a schedule on the board of like, this is what happens, this is going to help you. If you know, like, you have a fire drill that day and you have this, each student has their own like visual schedule in your classroom. Maybe you put like fire drills so that they're aware, hey, this is going to happen. I guarantee you when that fire alarm bell goes off, you have kids freak out. We had this past year, we had a fire alarm when we had no idea it was going to happen. I had a student, I swear, she hit the floor and she was fine. I've never seen someone hit the floor so fast, but it was because she had no idea that we had a fire drill. And anyway, but we got through it. But just having visual schedules helps you to kind of keep things on track. Adaptive pencil, weighted, fat, skinny, triangular, golf, anything. A lot of times having the big, thick will help someone who's got a hardcore pencil grip. If you have any of those type of questions, OT or OT assistants are great to offer suggestions for your classroom. Adaptive paper, graph, special spacing or texture, HYT, HWT, etc. Adaptive erasers, Post-its, highlighters. Highlighters sometimes can help kids, even non-ESS kids, just identify the most important facts in this passage with a highlighter. And they think it's cool because it's a highlighter. Squishy ball or sensory input. Fidgets. I know fidgets can be a big struggle in the classroom, but fidgets can be very helpful, even if it's just something simple and that they're having to do this that way, or bouncing their legs up and down. That way they're able to focus on something else. Tactile ruler, Velcro, page protector, color transparency, a binder clip for grip for turning pages, anything jumbo. If you have a student who is visually impaired, having great big things is going to help you. And then manipulatives. All kids benefit from manipulatives. All right, we're almost done. Mid-tech ideas, electrical device, screen magnifier, audiobooks. Sometimes it's easier to have a kid listen to someone else read the book to them than you. Adaptive CD. Voice amplification is going to be like a microphone. A scooter, a gait trainer, wheelchair. This would just be like a regular wheelchair. Braille translation software. Switch adaptive games or toys. Adapted switches. Adapted seating. Bouncy ball chairs with seat belts, wiggly bush cushions, adaptive keyboard, calculator, electronic speller or dictionary, word prediction software. That is a whole bunch of good stuff. All right, here's where some of this stuff might get super expensive. And if you are thinking any of your kids may need some of these high-tech things, you can always talk to your special ed director, or, things can be happening. You just have to prove that or share how the student needs it. FM systems, assisted listening systems, a computer, electronic tablet. Sometimes maybe a kid would benefit better from having an iPad than a Chromebook. portable word processor, text-to-speech programs, speech-to-text. So that is where actually the student is going to talk and the computer would listen and type on it. AAC device, touch system, smartboard, or alerting device. And guess what, guys? We have been learning this whole time. All right, come and check me out. My website is science.google.com/view/special sped tech teacher. My Twitter is @KentuckyGirlInAlabama. If you can think of anything else, please email me at jessicary996@gmail.com. And that is it. Yeah, I'm so sorry that was a lot of information. Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. And I didn't mean to rush through, but I wanted you to get as much as I can. And I really want to hit the assistive technology. So I hope you guys learned something.